Alright guys, how you doing? It's Rabea, hope you're all good. So this is the first video of 2022. Figured I'd start it off with something really useful to you guys, especially those of you who use both amps and load boxes and plugins to get your guitar tones. So if you've been watching my channel throughout the last year, you may have seen a series called High Gain Harmony, which is where I've been blending two of my high gain amps together to get a really nice sort of stereo amp rig tone, because it's something I love doing. And the last episode I decided to factor in some of the Neural DSP plugins and use two of those together in stereo to try and get a nice blend of stereo rigs using the plugins. Something else I wanted to point out that I also like to do is get cab tones using the line out of a load box and an amp straight into the computer, and then loading up an instance of, say, an Archetype plugin or the GGD Studio Cabs Cali edition, and then getting my cab tones that way. So in this video, I wanted to take all of those concepts and apply them to one guitar sound. So in essence, what I'm going to be doing is having one side Neural DSP plugin, and then the other side a real amp into a load box into the computer using the cab section of a Neural DSP plugin to create a stereo rig. The reason I think this is useful to you guys is that I'm sure some of you out there don't have access to two load boxes, two valve amplifiers, and then all the other bits and pieces to create a stereo rig at home. Whereas you might have, say, a Neural DSP plugin or another guitar amp sim and a single amplifier, load box, or emulated line out, and you can do this exact technique and basically give yourself a stereo rig from home in your studio with just one amplifier and one plugin. Okay, so I wanted to show you really quickly how you set this up. I want you to just ignore the stuff that's recording, because this is how I'm able to capture the sound of the plugin alongside my voice, alongside the guitar tones. So just ignore the rest of that. We want to be focusing on these two channels here. So essentially, you want to use whichever mic input on your interface. First channel, I've loaded up an instance of Archetype Nolly, so that's my amp sim. As you can see, I'm using the amp section here, and well, we don't need the stomp section, but I'm using the amp section, the EQ, and the cab, and I will also be using the effects section. That's my first channel, and I've panned that to the left. On the right, I've got my actual amp channel, so that's the line out of my Sir load box going into Logic, and then I'm loading up the same plugin, so Archetype Nolly, but I'm not using the amp section. I'm just using the EQ, the speaker section, and the effects section. That way I can dial in independent speaker tones for both sides, and I can use the effects to create stereo effects, which is absolutely awesome. One thing to be mindful of is that the level of your amplifier or your load box into the computer, you've got to sort of match it with the sort of input level of the amp sim. They're going to be different. In this case, I've actually boosted the output of mine by 3.5 so that I'm getting a nice equal level on either side, but that's just something to bear in mind when getting levels. Essentially, they want to be hitting the same level on both sides. So now I've explained about how you go about rigging this up. My signal chain is guitar into a Maxon OD808, so I can hit the front of both. Then into a splitter, I'm using the Decibel 11 split personality. It's useful having a phase inverter either on your computer or on the pedal here. I've got an inverter phase because amps with different channels can be in or out of phase, so it's nice to be able to flick that depending on what channel you're on. Anyway, out the Decibel 11, it allows me to split either A, which is going to be the amp sim, B, which is going to be the amp itself, or both at the same time. Okay, let's get started. We're going to start out with a crunch, an ambient sort of sound. We're going to work our way up to high gain. So let's start out with the amp side. So what you should be able to see now is the Archetype Nolly on your left. Now here comes the VX100. And here is both together. That sounds huge in the room, really full-bodied, a really nice barky crunch. The cool thing here is we can actually take a tube screamer, so in my case the Maxon, and I'm going to put that in front of both, so before the Decibel 11 splitter, and it will go into the front of both the sim and the amplifier. The Neural plugins actually take pedals in front just the same as the amp does, so check it out. This is without. And here it comes. in itself is really cool, really useful. And just to reiterate, the excitement for me with this whole thing and sharing it with you guys is the fact that you just need one amp and I guess the neural plugin or whatever other plugin you use, and you can do this, and it's really sick. It sounds great. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you it with the reverb and the delay on top. So just going to double click them on. So this will be just the Nolly side. And here's the Victory side. You may have noticed that the time between the two delays is slightly different. I wanted to get a nice sort of ping pong effect, but this is both together now. So immediately I'm all over that sound. That is totally my bag. Sounds really good. Love the fact that you can use both the reverb and delay for both the real amp and the plugin, of course, and create these really nice wide stereo ambient effects. Now if we split the coils down, so if you're anything like me, you'll get lost in that for hours. I could just sit and noodle over that sort of crunchy ambient tone. I think it sounds really good, and it's really easy to set up. So yeah, really, really big plus for me there. Really nice. You can throw on the tube screamer as well. It's a lot of reverb, but be nice for a layer. So I think we can all agree that that is an exciting prospect, especially if you like the sound of stereo rigs or you want to get into the world of blending amps together, also blending effects together, and just trying two amps together, because it's not as straightforward as just bit of gain, bit of volume, match levels. Actually, every amp reacts differently, so you want to find the area on the gain pots where you feel like it's sizzling out at the same rate, or you might, in terms of like how punchy it is, like for example, the dynamic range, like the less gain you have, one amp might like have bigger transients than the other. So it's about finding out how you can balance it all together so it feels like one thick guitar sound, which has been quite a challenge over the years for me, and it's great fun. And every time I stumble across a new way of doing it, I get really excited. And so this time I thought it was worth sharing with you. And this one, to be fair, is probably the easiest one to get the sound that I had in my head. So next up, we're going to try with high gain. So you can see on the screen grab now, we're running sort of the crunch amplifiers to give us our crunch tone. And just to recap with the OD8 in front. So a nice, thick, powerful tone. So now we're going to switch over to the high gain. One thing I'm going to do here that you may run across yourself is that these two in high gain go out of phase. So I have to flip the phase on my decibel 11. So as you can see on the screen grab, I'm running the high gain amplifier on Archetype Nolly and then its respective cab on the other side without the amp sim for my amplifier, which, just to reiterate, is the VX100. So I'm going to switch that over to high gain, flip the phase, and now I'll give you the sound of Archetype Nolly on its own. And then here's the VX100. Here's both together. So that's fat, that's really fat. And again, I've tried to go for the kind of high gain tone that I like. So it's quite bold, quite thick. And it's tight, but what we can do is add the tube screamer in front. So this is without it, with. So it works really well with the tube screamer, and also you can use the effects section as well. So you've got thick, high gain leads. Got a little bit carried away there trying to remember that old tapping thing that I used to love trying to play when I was younger. But in any case, we thought we'd try out the 7-string. So this is in drop A. Sounds pretty fat. Let's throw on the tube screamer. Okay, so that about wraps it up for this video. Really happy that I came across this particular method, and I can't believe I hadn't thought of it before, or at least tried it. I think I assumed maybe it would generate lots of noise or something. I'm not really sure why I hadn't come across it before. But in a nutshell, take your valve amplifier and load box setup, or emulated line out, or modeler line out, whatever. Run that into your computer and then load up an instance of, well, any Neural DSP plugin that you like, or any other guitar sim that you like, and then hard pan and run them in stereo. I would say that it definitely made things 10 times easier to dial in, because I used the same cab section for both. You know, I'm using the Nolly, Archetype Nolly, and the Archetype Nolly cab for my amplifier. Not only did it give me beautiful stereo effects, because they're the same effects and you can dial them in as you like, but on top of that, it was really easy to get the cab tones, because it was essentially the same cab. And I really like this method. I think it's really good. I mean, another thing that is worth pointing out is that when you're recording and you're writing and recording, much like the other video where you're auditioning the sound of the blend and then tracking them individually, well, this is the same thing. I mean, in terms of extra control, on one side you're using a DI and then you've got the amp sim. On the other side you're using the head line out and then you've got a cab on the top. So you've still got flexibility after the fact when mixing as well. So I think that's really cool. It's just a cool approach, and yeah, that's why I'm showing you this video. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you thought it was cool. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I guess it kind of counts as a high gain harmony between Archetype Nolly and my VX100. So I'm glad that works. But if you've got any other suggestions, let me know in the comment section. And if this video was helpful / wasn't clear enough, please let me know, and I'll do my best to put a bit more light, shed a bit more light on that, as it were. In any case, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. I've been Rabea, and I will see you all very soon.